Private First Class, Maya Chen's fingers danced across the keyboard in the dimly lit intelligence room, her eyes scanning lines of intercepted communications that would mean nothing to most soldiers. Outside, the Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on forward operating base Sentinel, but inside her small corner of the operations center, Maya was lost in a world of patterns, codes, and hidden meanings. She'd been at this for 6 hours straight, surviving on cold coffee and determination. Still playing computer games, Chen. The voice cut through her concentration like a knife. Sergeant Derek Hastings stood in the doorway, his muscular frame blocking most of the light. Behind him, 3 other soldiers from his squad snickered. "When are you gonna do some real soldier work?" Maya didn't look up. She'd learned months ago that engaging only encouraged them. At 5'3" and barely 110 pounds, she'd been an easy target since arriving at the base. The jokes never stopped. Tiny, they called her, the mascot, Diet Soldier. Her fellow analyst, Corporal Jenkins, had nicknamed her Mouse because she was so quiet and small. "I'm serious, Chen," Hastings continued, stepping closer. His shadow fell across her monitors. "My guys are out there risking their lives while you sit in air conditioning staring at screens. Must be nice being too weak for real combat." "I'm doing my job, Sergeant," Maya replied evenly, though her jaw tightened. She highlighted another suspicious communication pattern, her pulse quickening. This was important, more important than Hastings' ego. "Your job," he laughed, and his squad joined in. "Sweetheart, your job is whatever doesn't require actual physical ability. That's why they stuck you behind a desk." He flexed his arms deliberately. "Leave the fighting to those of us who can handle it." Maya's hand stilled on the keyboard. For a moment she considered telling him about her father, Marine Corps Colonel James Chen, recipient of 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star, about her brother David, who died leading his platoon in Fallujah, about the black belt she'd earned at 15, or the expert marksmanship scores that had surprised her instructors at basic training. But she'd learned that proving herself through words was pointless, so she stayed silent. "Nothing to say," Hastings smirked. "That's what I thought." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, by the way, briefing in 10 minutes. Try not to bore everyone with your nerdy analysis stuff. We've got a real mission to plan." As their footsteps faded, Maya released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from frustration. She looked back at her screen and the trembling stopped, because what she was seeing made everything else fade away. The pattern was unmistakable now. For 3 days she'd been tracking increased radio chatter from a known insurgent cell. The communications were fragmented, coded, but Maya had spent countless hours studying their methods. She could read between their encrypted lines. They were coordinating something big. Movement reports, supply requisitions, personnel rotations, all pointing to a single objective. Route 7. Maya's stomach dropped. Route 7 was the main supply corridor between FOB Sentinel and the regional command center. Hastings' squad was scheduled to escort a convoy through that route tomorrow morning. She pulled up satellite imagery, cross-referencing it with the enemy communication timestamps. They'd been surveilling the route for weeks, noting patrol times, identifying vulnerabilities. It was a trap, a carefully planned ambush. Maya grabbed her tablet and rushed toward the briefing room, her boots echoing in the concrete hallway. She burst through the door just as Commander Lieutenant Colonel Morrison was beginning his presentation. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her, most showing annoyance at the interruption. "Sir, I need to," Maya started, breathless. "Private Chen," Morrison's voice was ice. "You're late, take a seat." "Sir, it's urgent, Route 7. "Sit down." The commander's tone left no room for argument. Maya slid into the back row, her heart pounding. She had to make them listen. As Morrison outlined the convoy mission, the same route, the same timing she'd predicted, Maya's anxiety grew. She raised her hand. Morrison ignored her. She raised it higher. "Sir, please." "Chen, if you can't sit quietly, you can leave." Hastings twisted in his seat, shooting her a warning glare that clearly said, "Don't embarrass yourself." But Maya couldn't stay quiet. "Sir, I've been monitoring enemy communications. There's a pattern suggesting hostile forces are planning." "A pattern?" Hastings interrupted, laughing. "Commander, with all due respect, Chen's been seeing patterns in her alphabet cereal. Last week she thought the mess hall cook was a spy because he arranged the breakfast trays weird." The room erupted in laughter. Maya's face burned red, but she pressed on. "That's not, sir, this is different. The intercepted communications show clear coordination. They're positioning for an ambush on Route 7. I have the data right here." Morrison held up his hand. "Private Chen, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but military intelligence requires more than hunches and perceived patterns. We have reconnaissance reports from experienced field officers who have surveyed Route 7. It's clear." "But sir, the timing—" "That's enough." Morrison's patience had run out. "Sergeant Hastings' squad has successfully run this route 17 times. I trust his experience over your spreadsheets. Are we clear?" Maya's throat tightened. "Yes, sir." "Good. Now, as I was saying." Morrison continued the briefing as if she hadn't spoken. Maya stared at her tablet, the data glowing accusingly. She saw it so clearly, the trap waiting to spring, the ambush points, the estimated enemy strength. But she was just the small, quiet analyst, the girl who couldn't do real soldier work. Why would they listen? As the briefing ended and soldiers filed out, Hastings paused beside her seat. "Word of advice, Chen. Stay in your lane. Analysis is guesswork. Boots on the ground, that's reality. Leave the soldiering to soldiers." Maya watched through the window as Hastings and his squad headed to the motor pool, joking and confident. Tomorrow at 600 they'd roll out on Route 7, and she'd be proven right or wrong. Except if she was right, good soldiers would die. She looked down at her small hands, heard Hastings' words echo, too weak for real combat. Maybe he was right about her size, but he was dead wrong about her strength. Maya Chen returned to her desk and began working on a contingency plan. Because when things went wrong tomorrow, someone would need to know what to do. And sometimes the smallest soldier could make the biggest difference. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. Outside, the base settled into uneasy silence. Maya worked on, her screen illuminating her determined face. Tomorrow would change everything. The morning sun had barely crested the Afghan mountains when the convoy rolled out of Fob Sentinel. Maya sat in the third vehicle, a supply truck driven by Specialist Rodriguez, her stomach churning with dread. She tried one more time at breakfast to warn Hastings, but he'd walked away mid-sentence. Now, strapped into the passenger seat with her tablet secured in her pack, she could only watch the desolate landscape roll past and pray she was wrong. She wasn't wrong. Route 7 cut through a narrow valley, with rocky outcroppings on both sides, perfect ambush terrain. Maya had studied these mountains on satellite imagery for months. She knew every ridge, every hiding spot, every advantage the high ground offered. As they entered the valley, her tactical mind screamed warnings that no one wanted to hear. "You okay, Chen?" Rodriguez glanced over, nodding her white-knuckled grip on the door handle. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Rodriguez, we need to." The world exploded. The lead vehicle erupted in a massive fireball as an RPG struck its engine block. The shockwave hit Maya's truck like a physical blow. Before Rodriguez could even react, gunfire erupted from both sides of the valley, a devastating crossfire exactly as Maya had predicted. Bullets pinged off their armored truck like deadly hail. "Contact, contact," the radio screamed with panicked voices. "We're taking heavy fire. RPG's small arms estimate 30 hostiles." Rodriguez yanked the wheel hard right, trying to find cover behind a boulder. Another explosion rocked the convoy. The second vehicle was hit. Maya saw soldiers scrambling out, some wounded, all pinned down by relentless gunfire. Hastings' voice cut through the chaos on the radio. "Fall back, create a defensive perimeter, call for air support." But there would be no air support. Maya had intercepted the intelligence. The enemy had surface-to-air capabilities positioned nearby. They'd planned for everything. "Chen, get down," Rodriguez screamed, but his warning came too late. A rocket-propelled grenade struck the cliff face above them. The explosion sent a cascade of rocks crashing down onto their truck. The windshield shattered. The vehicle flipped violently, tumbling down an embankment. Maya's seatbelt dug into her chest as the world spun in a nauseating blur of sky, earth, metal, and blood. Her head cracked against something hard. The taste of copper filled her mouth. Then everything went black. When Maya opened her eyes, she was lying in dirt and broken glass. Her ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. Smoke burned her lungs. She tried to move and gasped. Pain lanced through her ribs. Carefully, she assessed herself. Cuts on her face and hands, possibly cracked ribs, her left ankle throbbing. But she could move. She was alive. "Rodriguez," her voice came out as a hoarse whisper. She turned her head, immediately wishing she hadn't. Rodriguez was still in the driver's seat, but he wasn't moving. Blood covered the shattered dashboard. Maya's medical training kicked in automatically. She crawled toward him despite the pain, checked for a pulse. Nothing. Her hands shook as she gently closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I tried to warn them. I tried." The ringing in her ears began to fade, replaced by the sounds of battle. Gunfire echoed through the valley, punctuated by explosions and screams. Maya pulled herself out of the wrecked truck, taking stock of her situation. The vehicle had tumbled away from the main convoy, down into a rocky gully. Above, she could hear the firefight continuing. But down here, hidden by smoke and terrain, the enemy hadn't spotted her yet. Her radio was damaged but functional. She pressed it to her ear, listening to the desperate communications. "We're pinned down. Hastings is hit. We need medevac now." "Negative on air support. Sam's in the area. Ground reinforcements 30 minutes out." "We don't have 30 minutes. They're flanking us." Then a new voice cut through, cold, speaking in Pashto. Maya's language training kicked in automatically. The enemy commander was coordinating his forces, and what she heard made her blood run ice cold. "Don't kill them all. We need prisoners. The Americans will pay well for their soldiers. Prepare the transport vehicle." Another voice responded. "What about the bodies? Identification." "Check them all. Leave no survivors except our captives. Execute any wounded who resist." Maya's breath caught. They weren't just ambushing the convoy. They were planning to take prisoners and execute the rest. She pressed the radio transmit button, but static greeted her. The signal was too weak to reach the base from this position. She was alone, cut off from the main force, with no way to call for help. Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden, to survive, to wait for the reinforcements that were supposedly 30 minutes away. That's what her training said. That's what protocol demanded. But 30 minutes might as well be 30 years. Maya pulled herself to a vantage point and peered over the rocks. Her heart sank. The convoy was destroyed, 3 vehicles burning, soldiers scattered behind inadequate cover. She counted 12 friendlies, all pinned down by at least 30 enemy fighters positioned on the high ground. Hastings was visible, his shoulder bleeding, trying to coordinate a defense that was falling apart. As she watched, enemy forces began surrounding the American position. The soldiers were running out of ammunition, running out of time, running out of hope. Then it happened. Maya watched in horror as Hastings and 4 others were forced to surrender, their weapons kicked away, hands zip-tied behind their backs. The enemy commander, a tall man with a scarred face, walked among them, selecting prisoners. He pointed to Hastings and 2 others. "These 3, load them in the truck." Then he pointed his pistol at a wounded soldier lying on the ground. Maya's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a scream as the shot rang out. "Sweep the area," the commander ordered in Pashto. Kill any survivors hiding. We leave in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Maya had 10 minutes before they executed the rest and disappeared with their prisoners into the mountains, where no rescue force would ever find them. Her hand instinctively went to her sidearm, a standard-issue M9 pistol with 2 magazines, 40 rounds total. She also had her combat knife and her tablet, though what good technology would do against 30 armed insurgents, she couldn't imagine. Hastings' mocking voice echoed in her memory, too weak for real combat. Maya checked her pistol, her hand surprisingly steady now. The fear was still there, coiled in her stomach like a snake, but something else was rising to meet it, something cold and focused and absolutely furious. They'd called her weak, too small, not a real soldier. She thought of her brother David, who died protecting his men. She thought of her father, who taught her that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. She thought of Rodriguez, still warm in that wrecked truck, who'd never go home to his family. And she thought of Hastings and the others, who had maybe 10 minutes left to live unless someone did something impossible. Maya closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to hide. She wasn't going to wait for reinforcement. She was going to save them. All of them. Alone. The small, quiet analyst checked her ammunition one more time, whispered a prayer her father had taught her, and began moving toward the enemy position. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. Maya crouched behind a cluster of boulders, forcing herself to breathe slowly, methodically. Her tactical training at Fort Huachuca seemed like a lifetime ago, but the instructor's voice echoed in her mind. In chaos, create order. In panic, find clarity. Break the problem into pieces. She pulled out her damaged tablet, wincing as pain shot through her ribs. The screen was cracked but functional. Her fingers moved across it, pulling up the satellite imagery she'd studied obsessively for months. The valley layout appeared, and she began marking enemy positions based on muzzle flashes and movement patterns she'd observed. 30 hostiles, maybe more. She had 40 bullets. The math was brutally simple and absolutely impossible. Maya's radio crackled with fragmented transmissions. She adjusted the frequency, catching pieces of the enemy's communications. Her Pashto wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. Prisoners secured in the transport. Search the wreckage for survivors. Commander says execute the wounded at dawn. Dawn, she checked her watch. 6:47 hours. Sunrise was in approximately 4 hours. 4 hours before they murdered her brothers and sisters in arms. 4 hours before Hastings and the others disappeared into a nightmare of captivity and eventual execution. Her hands trembled as she set down the tablet. This wasn't just impossible, it was insane. Every calculation, every tactical assessment, every piece of military training she possessed screamed the same answer. Wait for reinforcements, stay hidden, survive to fight another day. But Maya had never been good at accepting the answers everyone else expected. She pulled out a small photograph from her vest pocket, now creased and stained with her blood. Her brother David smiled back at her, 19 years old and invincible in his Marine Corps uniform. This photo had been taken 3 weeks before Fallujah, before the IED, before the flag-draped coffin and the 21-gun salute that had shattered her family. David had led a rescue mission that day, walked into impossible odds to save 3 wounded Marines trapped in a building. He'd gotten them out. All 3 survived. David didn't. What would you do? Maya whispered to the photograph, though she already knew the answer. David had never calculated odds or waited for permission to do the right thing. He'd simply acted. Their father had said at the funeral, "Your brother understood something most people never learn, that being a soldier isn't about how big you are or how strong. It's about who you refuse to leave behind." Maya carefully returned the photo to her pocket. Her hands had stopped shaking. She pulled up the enemy communications log on her tablet, studying their patterns. These weren't random insurgents. They were organized, disciplined, well-equipped. The commander, the one with the scarred face, was clearly experienced. His tactical decisions were sound, his men responsive to orders. But organization had a weakness. It relied on structure, on hierarchy, on trust within the command chain. Maya's mind began working differently now, not as a frightened soldier but as an intelligence analyst. She'd spent months studying insurgent psychology, their communication patterns, their cultural dynamics. She knew how they thought, how they operated, what they feared. An idea began forming, dangerous, audacious, requiring perfect timing and more than a little luck. It wasn't a direct assault. She couldn't win that fight. But intelligence operations weren't about brute force. They were about leverage, deception, exploiting weaknesses. She could see it now, like a chess game unfolding across the valley. Not one move, but a sequence. Create chaos, divide their forces, turn their strengths into vulnerabilities. But it required something she'd never done before, transitioning from analyst to operator, from thinker to fighter, from the small, quiet girl in the background to the tip of the spear. Maya inventoried her assets. 1 M9 pistol, 40 rounds. 1 combat knife. 1 damaged but functional tactical tablet with enemy communication access. Knowledge of the terrain from months of study. Element of surprise. They thought everyone was dead or captured. And something else, something harder to quantify. The absolute certainty that she would not abandon her unit. She accessed her tablet's tool suite, programs she'd installed for intelligence work but never used in the field. Communication interceptors, signal jammers, GPS spoofers, network intrusion protocols. In the right hands with the right strategy, these tools could be as deadly as any weapon. Maya began typing rapidly, her analytical mind crafting a psychological operation that would make her instructors proud or horrified. She wasn't sure which. She hacked into the enemy's communication network, a vulnerability she'd identified weeks ago but never reported because it seemed like theoretical knowledge, not actionable intelligence. Now it was her greatest weapon. She planted the first seed, a fake message, carefully crafted to appear as an internal communication between two of the enemy's squad leaders. The message suggested that someone had been stealing from the group's payment funds. In insurgent organizations, where loyalty was bought with money and ideology in equal measure, financial betrayal was the ultimate sin. Send. Through her interceptor, she heard the message arrive on their network, heard the confusion in the responses, seeds of doubt carefully planted. But that was just the beginning. Maya closed her eyes, visualizing the battlefield. She'd studied enough tactical operations to understand the principle. You don't need to be stronger if you can be smarter. You don't need more soldiers if you can make the enemy fight themselves. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, something he'd told her after she'd won a judo tournament despite being the smallest competitor. Maya, in a real fight, size matters. But in a real war, intelligence matters more. Your brain is the most dangerous weapon you'll ever carry. She opened her eyes, her jaw set with determination. Pain radiated from her ribs, her ankle throbbed, cuts on her face still bled. She was injured, alone, outgunned 30-1, facing an enemy that wouldn't hesitate to execute her if caught. The old Maya, the one who'd sat quietly through mockery, who'd accepted being dismissed and underestimated, would have hidden and waited. But that Maya died in the truck with Rodriguez. This Maya was something different, something forged in fire and blood, and the unshakable conviction that some battles had to be fought regardless of the odds. She thought of Hastings, bleeding and zip-tied in that transport vehicle. Hours ago, he'd called her too weak for real combat. Soon, he'd learn exactly how wrong he was. Maya checked her pistol one final time, ensured her knife was secure, and picked up her tablet. She took one last look at the enemy positions, memorizing every detail. Then Private First Class Maya Chen, 5'3" and 110 pounds, stood up and began moving toward 30 armed insurgents with nothing but 40 bullets, a combat knife, and a plan that was either brilliant or suicidal. Probably both. As she disappeared into the rocks, beginning her impossible mission, the sun climbed higher in the Afghan sky. In 4 hours it would be dawn. She intended to end this long before then. The hunt had begun. And for the first time in her military career, Maya Chen wasn't the prey. She was the predator. Maya moved through the rocky terrain like a shadow, every step calculated, every breath controlled. Her small stature, once a source of mockery, now became her greatest advantage. She could slip through gaps in the rocks that would never accommodate Hastings' bulky frame. She could move without disturbing loose stones. She was invisible in ways larger soldiers could never be. The enemy had established a perimeter around their makeshift prisoner-holding area, a partially collapsed building about 400 meters from the ambush site. Maya counted 12 guards visible from her position, which meant at least 18 more were either inside the structure or patrolling routes she couldn't see from here. Her tablet vibrated silently, another intercepted communication. Scorpion, this is Hawk 3, perimeter secure, no survivors found in the wreckage. Good, the commander, Scorpion, responded. Maintain watch. American reinforcements will come eventually. We move the prisoners in 3 hours before they arrive. 3 hours. Maya's timeline had just compressed. She adjusted her position, sliding between two boulders that provided cover while giving her a sight line to the building. Through a broken window on the second floor, she could see movement. She zoomed in using her tablet's camera, enhancing the image. There, Hastings, along with Corporal Martinez and Private First Class Johnson. All three bound, sitting against a wall, guarded by two insurgents with AK-47s. Maya's mind raced through scenarios. A direct assault was suicide. Even if she somehow killed the two guards silently, the alarm would be raised before she could free the prisoners. She needed a different approach. She pulled up the enemy communication network on her tablet. Her earlier message about financial theft had created ripples of suspicion, but it wasn't enough. She needed to fracture their unity completely, turn them against each other, create chaos that would give her the opening she needed. Maya studied their communication patterns, identifying the key players. Scorpion was the commander, but his authority wasn't absolute. There were two sub-commanders, Hawk and Viper. From their radio chatter, she detected tension between them, competing egos, old grudges barely concealed by professional cooperation. Perfect. Her fingers flew across the tablet, crafting another message. This one appeared to come from Scorpion to Viper. Hawk has been reporting your movements to the Americans. He's the reason we lost our safe house last month. Handle it quietly. Trust no one. She hesitated before sending it. This wasn't just psychological warfare. It was potentially starting a violent confrontation within the enemy ranks. People might die because of this message. Then she thought of Rodriguez, cold in that truck. Thought of the wounded soldier Scorpion had executed without hesitation. Thought of what these men planned to do to her unit. Send. The response was almost immediate. Through her scope, Maya watched Viper suddenly tense, his hand moving to his weapon as he stared at his radio. He glanced at Hawk, who stood across the compound, oblivious. The suspicion on Viper's face was visible even from this distance. Maya sent a second message, this time appearing to come from Hawk to another fighter. Viper's been skimming funds. Scorpion knows but hasn't acted yet. Watch your back. The beauty of intelligence work was that you didn't need to convince everyone, just enough people to create doubt. And doubt, in a high-stress situation with armed men, was more dangerous than any explosive. Voices rose in the compound. Accusations flew. Maya watched as the unified enemy force began fragmenting, soldiers clustering into suspicious groups, hands drifting toward weapons. Scorpion's voice cut through the chaos. Silence, everyone back to positions now. But the seed was planted. Maya could see it in their body language, the sideways glances, the increased distance between groups, the hesitation in following orders. Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. Maya needed to get closer, much closer. She studied the patrol pattern she'd been observing. 2 guards walked a circuit around the building every 8 minutes. They were disciplined but complacent. This was supposed to be a secure area with no threats. They had no idea a threat was already inside their perimeter. Maya waited until the patrol passed her position, then moved. She covered 50 meters in absolute silence, using the terrain to stay invisible. A cluster of supply crates provided her next cover point. She was now less than 100 meters from the building. Too close. If anyone looked in her direction with any attention, they'd spot her. Her tablet vibrated again. Another communication, but this one made her blood run cold. Scorpion, the Americans are offering a bounty for information on their missing soldiers. $5 million. Let them pay, Scorpion laughed. We'll send them proof of life after we extract everything useful from the prisoners. Then we'll see if they pay for bodies. Maya's jaw clenched. She had to move faster. She scanned the compound, her analyst's mind cataloging every detail. Supply truck on the east side, likely fuel or ammunition. Generator on the north side, providing power to the building. Communication antenna on the roof, they're linked to the outside network. Guard positions, weapon placements, blind spots in their coverage. And there, a ventilation shaft on the building's west side, partially hidden by debris. Large enough for someone small to fit through, large enough for Maya. But getting there meant crossing 30 meters of open ground. Maya pulled out her knife, feeling its weight. She'd never killed anyone before. All her combat training had been theoretical, practice dummies and paper targets. The thought of actually driving this blade into another human being made her stomach churn. Then she heard laughter from the building. Heard one of the guards mocking something in Pashto. Heard the sound of someone being struck, followed by Hastings' muffled groan of pain. The nausea disappeared, replaced by cold fury. Maya waited for the patrol to reach the far side of their circuit. The moment they turned the corner, she moved. Not running. That would create noise and motion that might catch a guard's peripheral vision. Instead, she employed the technique her father had taught her from his scout sniper days. The rushed crawl, a fast, low-profile movement that kept her below sight lines. 20 meters, 15, 10. A shout from behind her, her heart stopped. But the shout wasn't for her. 2 guards were arguing, voices raised in the suspicion she'd planted. Everyone's attention turned toward the confrontation. Maya covered the last 10 meters and pressed herself against the building's wall, breathing hard, ribs screaming in protest. She'd made it. The ventilation shaft was exactly where the satellite imagery had suggested. She pried off the rusted grate, wincing at every small sound. The shaft was tight, dark, and probably hadn't been cleaned in years. Maya squeezed inside, pulling the grate closed behind her. The shaft was barely wide enough for her shoulders. She had to army crawl forward, pushing with her toes, pulling with her fingers, every movement sending fresh waves of pain through her injured ribs. Claustrophobia threatened to overwhelm her. The darkness was absolute, the air stale and thick. She could hear voices through the ventilation, enemy soldiers directly below her, speaking in Pashto. Thinks he can give us orders. Don't trust Viper anymore. Who's really stealing the money? Maya smiled grimly in the darkness. Her psychological operation was working better than she'd hoped. She crawled forward, following the shaft as it turned and descended. Through grates below, she caught glimpses of the building's interior. A supply room, an empty corridor, A room full of weapons and ammunition. She filed that location away as critical information. Then she saw them. Through a grate directly ahead, the prisoner room came into view. Hastings sat against the wall, his face swollen and bloodied. Martinez was unconscious, head lolling to the side. Johnson was alert, her eyes darting around, looking for any opportunity to escape. Two guards stood watch, weapons ready, but their attention kept drifting toward the door, where shouts and arguments from the compound filtered through. Maya positioned herself directly above the room, studying the layout. The grate was secured with 4 screws, rusted but still solid. She'd need tools to remove it, tools she didn't have. Unless... She pulled out her combat knife, using the tip as a makeshift screwdriver. The first screw resisted, then slowly began to turn. 1 down, 3 to go. The second screw came free more easily. But as she worked on the third, her knife slipped, clanging against the metal duct. The sound echoed through the shaft. Both guards looked up. Maya froze, every muscle locked, not even breathing. Through the grate, she could see one guard's face directly below her, his eyes scanning the ceiling. "What was that?" he asked in Pashto. "Probably rats," the other guard replied. "This building is full of them." "I'll check." The first guard raised his rifle, pointing it directly at the grate where Maya lay hidden. Her hand moved to her pistol. If he saw her, if he fired, everything would be over. The whole plan, all her careful work, would collapse in an instant of gunfire and alarms. The guard's finger tensed on the trigger. Then from outside, an explosion shattered the afternoon air. Both guards spun toward the door, weapons raised, completely forgetting the noise from above. Maya's heart hammered. She hadn't said any explosives. What? Through her tablet, still receiving enemy communications, she heard panicked voices. "The fuel truck is burning." "Who fired? Who gave the order?" "It wasn't us. Viper's men did it." "Liar, this was Hawk." The paranoia and suspicion Maya had carefully cultivated had just escalated into violence. The enemy wasn't just divided anymore. They were starting to fight each other. Maya worked frantically on the last 2 screws as chaos erupted in the compound. Gunfire, not at Americans, but insurgent against insurgent. Scorpion's voice screaming for order being ignored. The third screw came free, 1 more. The guards below were at the door now, trying to understand what was happening. This was her chance. The 4th screw turned, came free. The grate dropped into her hands. She was through. Maya Chen, the analyst who was too weak for real combat, hung suspended in a ventilation shaft above 2 armed guards, about to drop into enemy territory with nothing but a pistol, a knife, and a plan that was rapidly spiraling into beautiful chaos. She took 1 breath, whispered for Rodriguez, and dropped through the opening. The real fight was about to begin. Maya landed in absolute silence, her knees absorbing the impact despite the screaming pain in her ribs. She was behind the 2 guards, who remained focused on the chaos erupting outside. 3 seconds, that's all she had before they turned around. Her training took over. She drew her knife and moved like water, the way her father had taught her during those early morning practice sessions when she was just a girl trying to prove herself. The first guard never heard her coming. Her blade found the gap between his armor plates, her other hand muffling any sound he might make. He dropped without a whisper. The second guard turned at the movement. His eyes went wide, a tiny woman covered in blood and dust appearing like a ghost from nowhere. His mouth opened to shout. Maya was faster. She kicked his knee with devastating precision, the crack audible even over the distant gunfire. As he fell, her pistol's grip connected with his temple. He crumpled, unconscious but alive. Hastings stared at her in absolute shock. "Chen, what the how did you?" "Quiet," Maya hissed, moving to cut his zip ties. Her hands worked quickly, efficiently. "We don't have time." "You came back," Martinez whispered, her voice thick with emotion as Maya freed her. "You came back for us." "I told you I saw the ambush coming," Maya said, moving to Johnson. "Nobody listened. Now we do this my way." "Where's the rest of the unit?" Hastings asked, rubbing his wrists where the zip ties had cut into skin. "How many came for extraction?" Maya handed him the unconscious guard's rifle. "Just me." "Just?" Hastings' jaw dropped. "Chen, there are 30 hostiles out there, you can't." 27 now, Maya corrected, checking her tablet. "And they're fighting each other. Watch." She pulled up the security camera feeds she'd hacked into, showing them the compound outside. Insurgents had separated into 3 groups, weapons drawn, shouting accusations at each other. A fire blazed where the fuel truck had exploded. Apparently someone's trigger finger had gotten too eager during the escalating paranoia. "What did you do?" Johnson asked in awe. "Intelligence warfare," Maya replied, her fingers already moving across the tablet. "I made them think they had traitors in their ranks, sent fake messages, planted evidence of theft and betrayal. They did the rest themselves." She pulled up the enemy communication network, showing them the stream of confused, angry messages flying between the different factions. "Scorpion is losing control," Maya continued, pointing to the camera showing the commander screaming at his subordinates. "Hawk and Viper both think the other is a traitor. The rank and file don't know who to trust. And now—" She typed rapidly, crafting 3 more messages. One appeared to come from Scorpion, ordering Hawk's execution. Another from Hawk, claiming Scorpion was working with the Americans. A third from Viper, revealing a fictional plan to steal all the ransom money. "Send, send, send." On the camera feeds, they watched the compound descend further into chaos. Shouting became shoving. Shoving became violence. 3 different factions all turning on each other. "You're brilliant," Martinez breathed. "You're absolutely brilliant." "I'm an analyst," Maya said simply. "This is what I do: find patterns, exploit weaknesses, predict behavior. They thought I was useless because I couldn't bench press 300 pounds, but wars aren't won with muscles anymore." A burst of gunfire from outside made them all flinch. Through the window, they saw 2 insurgents shooting at each other, both convinced the other was the enemy. "We need to move while they're distracted," Hastings said, taking charge instinctively. But then he paused, looking at Maya with new eyes. "Unless you have a plan." Maya did. "Martinez, you took engineering courses, right?" 2 years before I enlisted. Why?" Maya pulled up a schematic on her tablet. "This building has a gas line running to the generator. If we redirect it into the basement and create an ignition source with a delay, we can level the entire structure," Martinez finished, her eyes lighting up. "Take out whoever's still inside when we evacuate." "Exactly. But we need the explosion to be spectacular enough to make the survivors think they're under drone strike. I need them panicked, scattered, too afraid to regroup." Johnson grinned. "You're not just rescuing us, you're destroying their whole operation." "They killed Rodriguez," Maya said quietly, her voice hardening. "They executed wounded soldiers. They were going to torture you for information, then kill you anyway. So yes, I'm destroying everything they have." Hastings handed her the rifle he'd taken from the guard. "You lead, we follow. I was wrong about you, Chen, dead wrong." Maya accepted the weapon, though she preferred her pistol. She'd trained more with handguns. "Martinez, you handle the gas line. Johnson, gather any intelligence you can find, documents, hard drives, anything. Hastings, you're with me. We're going to set some additional surprises." They moved through the building like ghosts, Maya's tactical knowledge transforming them from prisoners into operators. She'd studied the satellite imagery so thoroughly that she knew the layout better than the people who'd occupied it. In the weapons cache room, Maya selected specific items with surgical precision. "Hastings, can you rig these grenades as tripwires?" "Yeah, but Chen." "Good, cover the main exit and the stairwell. Anyone who tries to flee up or down gets a surprise. While he worked, Maya accessed the building's old security system, patching it into her tablet. Now she could see every room, every corridor. She watched Martinez expertly redirecting the gas line in the basement, creating a bomb that would make the building's collapse look like a precision airstrike. Johnson returned with a backpack full of documents and 2 laptops. Intel Goldmine, she reported. This is their entire network, contacts, financing, future operations. Perfect. Maya downloaded everything to her tablet, then planted a virus that would corrupt their backup systems. When this was over, this cell would be crippled for months, maybe permanently. A massive explosion outside rocked the building. Through the cameras, they saw that Hawk and Viper's confrontation had gone hot, full automatic weapons fire, no longer pretending to be unified. Scorpion appeared on camera, firing his weapon in the air, screaming for order. But he'd lost them. The psychological warfare had worked too perfectly. They didn't trust him, didn't trust each other, didn't trust anyone. How long on the gas bomb? Maya asked through her commandeered radio. 3 minutes, Martinez replied. I'm setting the timer now. Good, everyone to the west exit. Hastings, your rear guard. Johnson, you're on point. Martinez, center. I'll coordinate. They moved through the building in tactical formation, Maya calling out turns and clear areas before they reached them, because she could see everything through her hacked cameras. It was surreal. The small analyst who'd been mocked for sitting behind screens was now using those exact skills to guide her team through a hostile environment with perfect precision. They reached the west exit. Maya checked her cameras. 2 guards outside, but they were looking toward the main compound where the firefight continued. On my mark, Maya whispered. 3, 2, 1, mark. Hastings took the left guard with his rifle. Maya took the right with her pistol, center mass, double tap just like the range. Both guards dropped. Move, Maya commanded. They sprinted from the building, heading toward the rocky terrain where Maya had hidden earlier. Behind them, shouts in Pashto. Someone had noticed their escape. Contact rear, Johnson called out. Keep moving. Maya returned fire without looking, providing suppression. 50 meters to hard cover. Bullets kicked up dust around them. Martinez stumbled. Johnson caught her, kept her moving. Hastings laid down covering fire, his rifle barking steadily. 30 meters, 20. Maya's timer showed 30 seconds until the gas explosion. 10 meters. They dove behind the boulder cluster just as the building erupted. The explosion was massive, far larger than Maya had calculated. The entire structure collapsed in on itself, a pillar of fire and debris reaching toward the sky. Secondary explosions followed, the weapons cache cooking off, ammunition popping like deadly fireworks. Anyone still in that building was gone. Through the smoke and chaos, Maya raised her tablet, accessing the enemy communications one last time. She broadcast on all their frequencies, speaking in perfect Pashto. This is the ghost you failed to kill. Your base is destroyed. Your commander is dead. Surrender now, or the next strike will leave nothing but craters. She disconnected, watching through her binoculars as the surviving insurgents, maybe 15 of them, scattered in complete panic. They'd lost their command structure, their base, their equipment, and most importantly, their nerve. Some ran for vehicles. Others simply fled on foot into the mountains. Within 5 minutes, the compound was abandoned except for the dead and the dying. Hastings stared at the destruction, then at Maya. You did this. 1 person, 40 bullets and a laptop. 33 bullets left, actually, Maya corrected, checking her magazine. And it's a tactical tablet, not a laptop. Martinez laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. She just destroyed an entire insurgent cell and she's correcting terminology. Maya allowed herself a small smile, but it faded quickly. We're not done yet. Reinforcements are still 20 minutes out. We need to secure a perimeter, treat wounds, and prepare an LZ for extraction. Johnson, you're bleeding from your shoulder. Martinez, that limp suggests a sprained ankle. Hastings. Cracked rib maybe too, he admitted. But Chen, how are you even standing? You look like you went through a meat grinder. Maya looked down at herself for the first time. Her uniform was torn and bloody, her face cut and bruised, her hands shaking from adrenaline crash. Every part of her body hurt. I'm standing, she said simply, because they needed me to stand. Now let's get to work. We have wounded to account for, intelligence to preserve, and a pickup to coordinate. As they began securing the area, Hastings touched her shoulder gently. Chen, Maya, thank you. You saved our lives. Maya met his eyes. You called me weak, Sergeant, said I wasn't a real soldier. Hastings' face flushed with shame. I was an idiot. I'm sorry doesn't even begin. You were right, Maya interrupted. I'm not like you. I'm not strong or big or intimidating, but I'm still a soldier, just a different kind. She turned away, moving to set up a defensive position, leaving Hastings staring after her with newfound respect. The small, quiet analyst had just won a battle without firing most of her bullets. Because the greatest weapon in any war isn't steel, the extraction helicopter was still 15 minutes out when Maya's tablet vibrated with an urgent alert. Her blood went cold as she read the intercepted communication. All units, this is Scorpion. I repeat, Scorpion is alive. Regroup at secondary position. The prisoners escaped, but they can't have gone far. Find them, kill them all. Impossible, Martinez whispered, looking at the still-smoking ruins. Nobody survived that explosion. But Maya was already scanning the area with her binoculars. There, movement in the rocks north of the compound. She zoomed in and saw him. Scorpion, his uniform scorched and bloodied but very much alive. He must have been outside during the explosion. And he wasn't alone. She counted 12 insurgents rallying to his position. They're regrouping, Maya reported, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. Scorpion survived. He's got 12 fighters with him and they're moving this way. We can't fight them, Johnson said, checking her ammunition. We're almost out of ammo, half of us are wounded, and we've got no cover here. Hastings grabbed the radio. We call in the helicopter early, extract under fire if we have to. Negative, Maya said sharply. The LZ isn't secure. If they arrive now, we risk losing the helicopter and the crew. We need 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to hold them off. With what? Martinez demanded. We've got maybe 30 rounds between us. Maya's mind raced, analyzing the tactical situation the way she'd analyzed intelligence data for months. The enemy had superior numbers and firepower, but they also had something else. They were angry, scared, and desperate. Scorpion had just watched his entire operation collapse. He wasn't thinking clearly, he was thinking emotionally. And emotional soldiers made mistakes. I have an idea, Maya said, pulling up the enemy communication network one last time. But you're going to have to trust me. She didn't wait for permission. Her fingers flew across the tablet, crafting one final message, this one appearing to come from a frantic insurgent. Scorpion, American drone overhead. I have laser designation on your position. Take cover. She sent it, then immediately activated a signal jammer she'd cobbled together from salvaged equipment. Through her binoculars, she watched Scorpion's group suddenly scatter, diving for cover, scanning the sky frantically for a drone that didn't exist. They were paralyzed by fear of an airstrike. Brilliant, Hastings breathed. It'll buy us 2 minutes, maybe 3, Maya said. Then he'll realize it's fake and they'll come at us angry and reckless. So what's the plan for when they figure it out? Maya pointed to the burning compound. That wreckage is creating a massive thermal signature. Any real drone surveillance is going to be focused there, not on us. We use the heat signature as cover, move position, and make them think we're in a different location than we actually are. She pulled out her pistol, checked the magazine. 7 rounds left. When they come, they'll be expecting us to be dug in defensively. Instead, we're going to do something they won't predict. "What's that?" Johnson asked. "We're going to attack them." Hastings stared at her. "You want 4 wounded soldiers with 30 rounds to assault 12 hostiles. I want 4 soldiers to use surprise, terrain knowledge, and superior tactics to neutralize a disorganized enemy force," Maya corrected. "There's a difference." She quickly sketched out her plan. It was audacious, dangerous, and completely insane. It was also their only chance. "Martinez, you're the best shot. You take the high position here with the rifle. You're not trying to kill anyone, just suppress and redirect. Make them think we have more shooters than we do. Johnson, you and Hastings flank left and right. I'll draw them into the kill zone." "You'll what?" Hastings exploded. "Chen, you can't." "I'm the smallest, the fastest, and the one they least expect to be aggressive," Maya interrupted. "I'm the bait, trust me." She didn't give them time to argue. Through her binoculars, she saw Scorpion standing up, realizing the drone was a fake, screaming orders at his men. They were forming up, preparing to advance. Maya moved before she could second-guess herself. She sprinted from cover toward a rocky outcropping 30 meters away, deliberately exposing herself. "There," someone shouted in Pashto. "The girl, she's alone." Gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off rocks around Maya as she dove into cover. She'd gotten their attention. Scorpion's voice carried across the distance. "Take her alive. She's the one who destroyed everything. I want her alive." Maya smiled grimly. Anger and ego, exactly as she'd predicted. He wasn't thinking tactically anymore. He was thinking personally. The insurgents advanced in a loose formation, focused entirely on Maya's position. They passed directly through the kill zone she designated. Martinez's rifle cracked from the high ground. An insurgent dropped. The others spun toward the shot, confused about where fire was coming from. Hastings and Johnson opened up from the flanks, their shots careful and precise. Another insurgent fell, then another. The enemy force fragmented, no longer advancing in formation but scattering for individual cover. Exactly what Maya wanted. A divided enemy was a defeated enemy. She popped up from her cover, fired 3 precise shots from her pistol. One caught an insurgent in the leg, dropping him. The others dove for cover, giving her team more time. But Scorpion was smarter than his men. While they engaged the obvious threats, he'd circled around, moving toward Maya's position with 3 of his best fighters. Maya saw them too late. She was trapped, cut off from her team, with 4 rounds left in her pistol against 4 approaching enemies. Scorpion stepped into view, his scarred face twisted with rage and satisfaction. "The little analyst," he sneered in accented English. "You cost me everything. Now you'll pay for it slowly." His 3 men emerged from cover, weapons raised, forming a semicircle around her position. There was no escape route, no clever trick left to play. Maya's hand tightened on her pistol. 4 rounds, 4 targets. The math was simple, but the execution was impossible at this range with a handgun. "Drop your weapon," Scorpion commanded. Maya did mental calculations at lightning speed. Distances, angles, probabilities. Her instructor's voice from Quantico. Sometimes the best tactical decision is the one nobody expects. She dropped her pistol. Scorpion smiled, lowering his guard slightly. "Smart girl." Maya's hand flashed to her boot, pulling her combat knife. In one fluid motion, the same motion her father had taught her 1,000 times, she threw it. The blade spun through the air, covering 20 feet in less than a second. It buried itself in Scorpion's shoulder, the impact spinning him around. His men hesitated for 1 critical second, shocked by the audacity. Maya dove for her pistol, rolled, came up firing. 1 shot center mass, 1 insurgent down, second shot slightly right, another down. The third insurgent fired wildly, missing in his panic. Maya's third bullet didn't miss. Scorpion, wounded but still dangerous, raised his weapon with his good arm. Maya's pistol clicked empty. They stared at each other across 10 feet of dusty ground, his rifle versus her empty gun. Then a single shot cracked from the high ground. Scorpion's rifle flew from his hands as Martinez's bullet struck it dead center. Hastings and Johnson emerged from cover, weapons raised, securing the remaining insurgents who were throwing down their weapons in surrender. Maya walked slowly toward Scorpion, who clutched his wounded shoulder, staring at her with disbelief. "You asked how one small woman destroyed your operation," Maya said quietly in Pashto. "It's simple. You saw weakness where there was strength. You saw size instead of skill. You underestimated your enemy." She retrieved her knife from his shoulder. He gasped in pain and wiped it clean. "That's a mistake you'll never make again." The sound of helicopter rotors filled the air. The extraction team had arrived, right on schedule. As Marines poured from the helicopter to secure the area, Hastings approached Maya. She stood among the defeated enemy, covered in blood and dust, holding an empty pistol and a combat knife, having just orchestrated the complete destruction of an insurgent cell. "Chen," Hastings said softly, "remind me never to piss you off." Maya allowed herself a small, exhausted smile. "Noted, Sergeant." Marines from the extraction team fanned out across the compound, securing prisoners and treating wounded. Maya sat on a boulder, her hands finally beginning to shake as the adrenaline drained from her system. A medic approached, but she waved him toward Martinez first. "Chen, you're bleeding from at least 6 places I can see," the medic protested. "And I'll still be bleeding in 5 minutes, Maya replied. "Treat the others first." Major Rebecca Lawson, the extraction team commander, strode toward her, tablet in hand. "Private Chen, I need a sitrep. What the hell happened here?" Maya stood, wincing as her ribs protested. "Ma'am, our convoy was ambushed at 6:34 hours on Route 7, exactly as I'd predicted in yesterday's briefing. Enemy force of approximately 30 hostiles. They separated us, took prisoners, executed wounded. I was thrown clear during the initial attack and conducted a solo rescue operation." Lawson's eyebrows rose. "Solo? You expect me to believe one private took down an entire insurgent cell?" "I don't expect you to believe anything, ma'am. The evidence speaks for itself." Maya handed over her tablet. "Complete documentation, intercepted enemy communications, tactical analysis, photographic evidence, and intelligence data recovered from their operation. You'll also find files detailing their entire network, financing, and planned future operations." The major scrolled through the data, her expression shifting from skepticism to astonishment. "This is, Private, this is an intelligence goldmine. How did you?" "I did my job, ma'am, the job I was trained to do." Maya's legs suddenly felt unsteady. She sat back down heavily. "Medic," Lawson called sharply. Then more gently to Maya, "Soldier, you've done enough. Let us take it from here." But before the medic could reach her, gunfire erupted from the North Ridge. "Contact, we've got more hostiles incoming," a Marine shouted. Maya was on her feet instantly, pain forgotten. She grabbed her binoculars, scanning the ridge. Her heart sank. At least 20 fighters, reinforcements from a nearby cell, drawn by the smoke and explosions. "They've got RPGs," someone yelled as a rocket streaked toward the landed helicopter. The pilot reacted instantly, lifting off to avoid the strike. The RPG missed by meters, exploding in the dirt where the helicopter had been seconds before. "We're sitting ducks here," Hastings shouted. "No cover, minimal ammunition." Major Lawson was already on the radio. "Air support is 10 minutes out. We need to hold this position until—" "We don't have 10 minutes," Maya interrupted, studying the enemy approach. Her tactical mind, even exhausted, was already processing the battlefield. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely." Talk fast, Private. Maya pointed to the burning compound. The fire created an updraft. If we detonate the remaining fuel reserves, we can create a smoke screen dense enough to obscure enemy targeting. They can't hit what they can't see. That'll also obscure our defensive positions, one of the Marines objected. Not if we're not in defensive positions, Maya countered. She pulled up her tablet overlaying the terrain map. We use the smoke as cover to advance, not retreat. They're expecting us to dig in and defend the LZ. Instead, we push through their line here, she indicated a gap in their formation, and take the high ground on the north ridge. Superior position, better fields of fire. Lawson studied the map, then looked at Maya with newfound respect. You want to assault uphill into superior numbers. I want to use terrain, surprise, and tactical superiority to defeat an enemy that's operating on assumptions, Maya replied. They think we're trapped. Let's prove them wrong. The major made her decision in seconds. Do it. Marines, you heard the private, prepare to advance on her mark. Maya coordinated with Johnson to rig the remaining fuel drums for detonation. 30-second delay. When it blows, we move fast and stay tight. The enemy was advancing down the ridge, confident in their numbers. Maya watched them through her scope, calculating trajectories and timing. Detonate, she ordered. The explosion sent a massive plume of black smoke billowing across the battlefield. Under its cover, Maya led the advance. Despite her injuries, despite her exhaustion, she moved with absolute focus. Left flank 2 hostiles at 10 o'clock, she called out, her voice steady. The Marines engaged, dropping both targets. They pressed forward through the smoke, Maya calling out enemy positions before the Marines could even see them. She'd memorized their approach pattern in those critical seconds before the smoke deployed. Chen, how do you know where they are? A Marine asked, amazed. I watched their formation, predicted their movement based on standard insurgent tactics. They're following doctrine which makes them predictable. They emerged from the smoke halfway up the ridge. The insurgents, expecting to fight a defensive force below, were completely unprepared for enemies appearing in their flank. Fire, Lawson commanded. The Marines' disciplined volleys tore into the confused enemy force. Maya dropped to one knee, her pistol reloaded with a magazine scrounged from a fallen insurgent's weapon. She fired carefully, precisely, each shot counting. An RPG team swung toward them. Maya's shot took out the gunner before he could fire. Hastings got the loader. They're breaking, Johnson shouted. She was right. The insurgent force, already shocked by the compound's destruction and now flanked and outgunned, began to retreat. Some threw down weapons. Others fled into the mountains. Within 3 minutes, the ridge was secure. Maya stood at the summit, looking down at the battlefield she'd dominated for the past 6 hours. The burning compound, the scattered enemy, her team alive because she'd refused to accept the impossible. The extraction helicopter swooped back in, landing on the now secure ridge top. All personnel load up, Lawson ordered. Marines helped the wounded aboard. Maya was about to climb in when her legs finally gave out. She stumbled, and Hastings caught her. I've got you, he said quietly. You've done enough, Chen, more than enough. He lifted her easily. She weighed nothing to him, and carried her to the helicopter. As they lifted off, Maya watched the Afghan landscape fall away below. Somewhere down there, Rodriguez's body still lay in that wrecked truck. She'd have to tell his family what happened. Tell them he didn't die alone or forgotten. You okay? Martinez asked, squeezing her hand. Maya nodded, too exhausted for words. But she wasn't okay, not yet. Every muscle screamed, her ribs felt like fire, and the adrenaline crash was hitting like a freight train. As the helicopter banked toward base, Maya finally allowed her eyes to close. Around her, Marines who'd witnessed her actions sat in awed silence. The small, quiet analyst had led them through hell and brought them out alive. And not one of them would ever underestimate her again. Maya woke in the base hospital 3 days later, her body wrapped in bandages, IV lines snaking from her arms. The fluorescent lights hurt her eyes. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten there. Then it all came rushing back. The ambush, the rescue, the impossible battle she'd somehow survived. A nurse noticed her stirring. "Welcome back, Private. You've been out for 72 hours. How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Maya croaked, her throat raw. "Close. 3 cracked ribs, severe contusions, mild concussion, dehydration, and about 40 stitches in various locations. But you'll make a full recovery." The nurse smiled. "You're tougher than you look." Over the next hour, doctors examined her, asked questions, checked readings. Maya answered mechanically, her mind still processing everything that had happened. She kept seeing Rodriguez's face, hearing the explosion, feeling the weight of impossible decisions. Finally, they left her alone, or so she thought. The door opened and Sergeant Hastings entered, walking carefully, his own bandages visible under his uniform. He carried something in his hands, a folded American flag. "Chen," he said quietly, pulling up a chair, "how are you?" "I'll live, you." "Same." He sat in silence for a moment, turning the flag over in his hands. This was Rodriguez's, his personal flag. Before the mission, he asked me to hold on to it, said he had a superstition about carrying it into combat. "I wanted you to have it." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Hastings, He'd want you to have it," Hastings continued, his voice thick with emotion. "You tried to warn us, Chen. You saw the trap and we were too arrogant to listen. Rodriguez died because I was too stupid to respect your intelligence." He met her eyes, his own red-rimmed. "You came back for us anyway. After we'd mocked you, dismissed you, treated you like you didn't matter, you risked everything to save us." He set the flag gently on her bed. "I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover what I need to say. You're not just a good soldier, Chen. You're the best soldier I've ever served with, and I was too blind to see it." Maya touched the flag with trembling fingers. "We all made it out, Sergeant. That's what matters." "Not all of us." Hastings' voice broke. "Rodriguez, Williams, Patterson, 3 good men dead because I didn't listen to the smartest person in the room." The door opened again. Major Lawson entered, followed by Lieutenant Colonel Morrison and 2 officers Maya didn't recognize. "Private Chen," Morrison said formally, "how are you feeling?" Maya tried to sit up straighter, wincing. "Ready to return to duty, sir." "That won't be necessary for a while." Morrison stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Private Chen, 3 days ago you conducted one of the most extraordinary solo operations in modern military history. You infiltrated enemy territory, orchestrated a psychological warfare campaign, rescued 3 captured soldiers, destroyed an insurgent cell, and recovered intelligence that has already led to the dismantling of an entire regional network." He paused. "You also directly disobeyed orders to remain at base." Maya's heart sank. She'd saved lives, but she'd also violated protocol. "Sir, I accept full responsibility." Morrison held up his hand. "You also proved that sometimes the right decision isn't the one in the manual. Your tactical analysis was flawless. Your execution was exceptional, and your courage was extraordinary." One of the unknown officers stepped forward. A general, Maya realized with shock, seeing the stars on his collar. "Private Chen, I'm General Marcus Hayes, Joint Special Operations Command. I've reviewed your operation in detail. Your use of intelligence as a weapon, your understanding of psychological warfare, your tactical improvisation. These are skills we desperately need." He pulled out a folder. "You're being awarded the Silver Star for Valor. You're also being promoted to Specialist. And I'm here to personally offer you a position with our Special Operations Intelligence Division. You'd be working with our most elite units, providing the kind of analytical support that saves lives." Maya stared at him, speechless. "You don't have to decide now," Hayes continued. "Take time to recover, to think it through. But Chen, Soldiers like you, who can think 3 moves ahead and turn intelligence into action. You're the future of how we fight wars." After they left, only Hastings remained. He stood, extended his hand. "Specialist Chen, it has a nice ring to it." Maya shook his hand. "I'm still the same person I was 4 days ago, Sergeant." "No," Hastings said seriously. "4 days ago, you were a talented analyst we were too stupid to appreciate. Today, you're a decorated hero who proved that strength isn't measured in muscle mass or height. It's measured in courage, intelligence, and heart." He smiled, a genuine expression free of mockery. "And for what it's worth, I'd follow you into any battle any time. You've earned more than respect, Chen. You've earned trust." 2 weeks later, Maya stood in the operations center, the same room where she'd been dismissed and mocked. But everything was different now. When she spoke, people listened. When she identified patterns, they investigated. When she raised concerns, they took them seriously. "Specialist Chen," a young private approached nervously. "I think I found something in the intercepts, but I'm not sure if it's significant enough to report." Maya remembered being that uncertain analyst, afraid to speak up. "Show me what you've got. Every detail matters. Every voice deserves to be heard." As they analyzed the data together, Maya caught her reflection in a dark monitor. The small woman staring back was covered in fatting scars, but her eyes held something new, confidence earned through fire and blood. They'd called her weak, too small, not a real soldier. She'd proven them wrong in every way that mattered. And now, as she prepared for her next mission with special operations, Maya Chen understood a fundamental truth. The greatest battles aren't won by the strongest warriors. They're won by the smartest ones. Rodriguez's folded flag sat on her desk, a reminder of the cost of war and the responsibility of those who survive. She touched it gently before turning back to her work. Somewhere in the world, another enemy was making plans. And Maya Chen would be ready. The end.